took that.
Yeah, there are two more people. No, one more person.
So somebody's
Yeah,
who the
yeah.
Shabar's going in.
No, he should be coming.
Or Michael.
And Michael, right. So here's one now. That's okay. That's Shabar. But here we go. No. Terry will get it.
Okay.
Yeah, just.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
Somebody else.
Welcome to Real Talk Radio with your host Osman Shabazz and my partner Eric&Ossman. Today we have a great discussion about the myths and facts about charter schools versus traditional public schools. I am honored today and happy to have with us the president of the Newark School Board of Education, or should I say the chairman, Rashan Salam. I'm sorry, that's my favorite running back. Rashan Hassan. We also have Shavar Jeffries, Herbert Glenn, and Michael Dixon. So how's everything going, Eric?
Hey, everything is well. I'm looking forward to today's show. There's been a lot of discussion going on Facebook and leading up to this election in April regarding charter schools and traditional public schools. Parents are, taking sides and trying to figure out what's fact and what's fiction. There's a lot of propaganda out there, and I know we tried to assemble a group of folks who could come and talk about these things, and maybe we can create some clarity to what's going on. So that's what we hope. We got a 2-hour show here, and I expect that a lot is going to come out of it.
I'm very excited as well, Eric. I tell you, there's nothing more heartwarming from my standpoint than being in a room full of intellectuals, powerful, thinking men, African American men. And to my right I have Rashan, and across there is Mr. Herbert Glenn, and of course one of the people that I went to war with and for is Mr. Shavar Jeffries, former mayoral candidate, as well as a partner in a prestigious law firm. So I'm very honored to have these guests. And of course, Michael Dixon, who will be running for the presidency of the
Newark
Teachers Union. Yeah.
Well,
So
I want to stop you for a second, Oz, because I don't want any hater email or post on Facebook. I enjoy being in a room with some powerful African American men, but I wouldn't mind having some very intellectual and powerful African American women join us as well. I think that they play a major part in the community, and especially in the African American community where the dad is absent from the home. They are the only caregiver, and I want to make sure that we give equal props to them as well.
Well, we know that without the courage, the steadfastness of our African American women, the black community, to be quite frank with you, would be in the toilet. Without these strong women, we would definitely be, in big trouble. And we've had a lot of strong women, basically, the past few weeks. Sheila Monte, Veronica Branch. We've had female students that have won our college student recognition prize, and so we're all one family.
Right.
We're going to get it done.
All right, so what I'd like to do is, I'm sure that the listening audience knows some of these gentlemen, but I'd like to take a couple of minutes and just kind of go around the room and we'll start with Chairman Hassan, and just a little bit about yourself before we get into this discussion.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Rashan Hassan. I currently serve as the chairman of the Newark Board of Education. I'm born and raised here in the city of Newark. I love my hometown. I'm a proud father of a 4-year-old son named Jordan Avery Hassan, who I adore, and I work very hard for him to make sure that his life will be a lot easier than my life has been. Aside from serving as a member of our board, I also am currently employed as a supervisor for Verizon here in the state of New Jersey. And in that role, I'm responsible for executive complaints and escalations for our organization here in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, excellent. Could you introduce yourself, Sharon? I'm sure a lot of people know you, but for those who don't, here we go.
All right, thank you. Very excited to be here. I think Eric&Ossman, what you do in terms of sharing information in our community, factual information so that people can make important decisions about their lives and their futures, and the futures of our children is indispensable. So thank you very much for what the both of you do every day, and thank you also for the opportunity to participate in this dialogue. My name is Shabar Jeffries. Also born and raised in the great city of Newark. I'm married, been with the same woman 17 years now. We have 2 children, a 10-year-old and 8-year-old. And I've dedicated much of my life to fighting to make sure that every child in the city of Newark and every child in our state has access to the kind of educational opportunity God blessed me with. So I was proud to be the founding board president of the Team Academy, now KIP schools in Newark. I was very proud to also serve as the school board president as well. I've been a litigator for 16 years, and I've spent much of that time bringing lawsuits against the state to put more money in our public schools. So I've worked on some of the Abbott cases, worked on some of the Bacon cases, which put more money in our poor rural schools throughout the state of New Jersey. I've represented parents in Newark fighting for better educational opportunities for their children. But I've also participated in education reform litigation, seeking to make sure that all kids have access to a high quality education, whether it's in the public charter schools or in the traditional district schools as well. So very excited, to participate in this dialogue, and looking forward to a robust conversation.
Okay, next we have Mr. Herbert Glenn. How you doing, Herbert?
Hey family, how we doing?
I'm fantastic, man. We're doing great. I'm doing great.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. Eric and you have been doing a phenomenal job at bringing together a real positive concern about what urban media can protect in relationship to communicating information and things that are important for our community. I developed a program called We Care Partners, which is a nonprofit organization. It was a culmination of activities doing outreach in the community. After 12 years working in corporate America, I worked with Solomon Brothers Incorporated before it dissolved itself in the financial market. And from there, working as a entry-level employee to a programmer, developing applications for the financial markets, I got downsized. I got laid off. And when I got laid off with a family of 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. And all of my children have gone to school here in New Jersey. We migrated out of the Bronx in New York. I was actually born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So the relationship that I have here in this community has really multiplied itself in a number of different ways, and how I had to get involved simply because I had children in the system of education and looking for opportunities that I can be able to take care of them. In my quest to take care of them, I became an entrepreneur, started doing photography, and went back to school to get re-educated in the area of media. And from there, I've been able to amass the kind of activities and disciplines that I'm involved with today.
Fantastic. Great.
All right. And then we just have, you made it. How is the traffic coming up, brother?
It was clean on Springfield Avenue, thank God.
Okay, excellent. So,
Okay, we're going to bring on Michael Dixon, candidate for the presidency of the Newark Teachers Union. How's it going, Michael?
It's going on. I apologize for my tardiness, but we were having an executive board session tonight, and unfortunately it ran a little longer than I think it should have. So I'm glad to be here. Mr. Jeffries, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Mr. Hassan,
Always a pleasure, my brother.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
how are you? From my days when I used to teach in Irvington.
When you was teaching one of my children.
That is correct.
So if you can kind of give us a compendium of your background and what you're involved in terms of a summary of
Okay.
your activities and what you're doing for the community and what your future plans are.
Okay, well, currently I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the Newark Teachers Union. I'm a 25-year public school educator. I believe in public education. I believe in choice. True choice, I believe in. I'm an avid baseball player. I coached Westside High for the past 10 years before I went down to the Union full time. I am a math teacher. I'm currently at Ivy Hill Elementary, serving in the role of a 6th grade co-teacher / math coach. And I'm just happy to be here.
Fantastic, Michael.
So I want to just jump right into it, right?
Okay.
And I guess your summary just kind of brought to mind my first question to talk about facts and fiction. So there are those, Mike, on one side who say that the insertion of charter schools and what's going on is choice for parents. But you qualified what you said. What you said regarding choice, and you said true choice. So talk to me about what you mean by true choice as opposed to just choice.
Well, when I say true choice, when you think charter, previously you thought private. And that was a choice a parent made to take their money and move their child to another system. When I say true choice, now that the charters are receiving the public funds and they're terming them public charters, the playing field is so unbalanced. It's like we're running a race. The public is running uphill with the wind in our face, and the charters are running downhill with the wind at their backs, and they expect the same result. And when they're pulling the cream of the crop from the public school with the option after October 15th of sending them back, we have no options. We have to deal with those special education kids. We have to deal with those BD kids. We have to deal with just the kids that just don't conduct themselves as they should conduct themselves. So when I say true choice, and true choice talking about it One Newark, that's not a choice when a parent has a community school that's across the street from them, and then they have to go to a center to be told, okay, you can go here, here, here. You have to go to A, B, or C. It's okay you have to catch 2 buses to get there. That's not a true choice, because they don't have any say in that choice. These are your options. You choose.
Okay, gentlemen.
Can I jump in on that?
All right.
And I'll jump in after Mr. Jeffries.
Yeah, first I think, and again, I respect everybody here, but I think Mr. Dixon just said some things that just aren't true factually. The facts are, in terms of the public charter schools serve a comparable demographic of children as the traditional public schools in the city of Newark. Over 80% free or reduced lunch kids. Many studies have been conducted on the attrition rates, because we often hear about this argument that the public charter schools, send kids back after October 15th. And the studies show that there's actually a lower attrition rate in general in public charter schools than in the traditional public schools. So that's just not shown to be true as well. And true choice means the parent ought to make the decision about what education serves their child. Not me, not Mr. Dixon, not anybody here, but the parent. And I believe that the parent ought to have the same options that people like Mr. Dixon have, like people in the union have, to move out. Very few teachers who work in the city of Newark live in the city of Newark. Even fewer of the small minority that live in the city of Newark, almost none of them put their kids in their own schools in which they teach. But then when they say to poor parents, when they want to make the same choice the union members have made, then that's not true choice. So I believe parents deserve the same option as anybody else. If the school is working for them, they're going to keep them there. And they should have the right to do that. And I want all schools to work, traditional public or public charter school. But if it's not working, I believe the parent ought to have the right to choose something else that works. To me, that's a human, basic, fundamental right. If what they choose is something called a public charter school, that's their choice. If what they choose is something called a traditional public charter school, a traditional public school, that's their choice. If it's a hybrid school, that's their choice. I actually care less. I'm kind of like Malcolm X. By any means necessary, These kids need to be educated. I don't care what label you put on the school. What I care about are these babies learning? Are they being educated? And we have to get to that space because, frankly, anything other than that is a political adult conversation. Parents care about the education of their kids, and that is why 10,000 North parents have chosen public charter schools, and that is why another 10,000 have their kids on a waiting list. Half of the district wants the charter school, and I believe we ought to honor the choice that our parents are making.
So, you know, when I think
This
of
is Rashawn Hassan, chairman of the Newark Public School Advisory Board, and he's going to put his input into what these two gentlemen were just talking about.
So, you know, I believe both Mr. Dixon and Mr. Jeffries just made a great point. But I would add to that, when we talk about true choice, right, that ultimately has to rest with the parents. Because as a parent, I don't believe there's anybody on the face of this earth that can sit me in a room and tell me what decision I should be making on behalf of my child. That's my right as a parent, first and foremost. Secondly, true choice should mean that anybody in this community should respect the choice and the decision that I've made when it comes down to the education of my child. I should not be ridiculed for that. I should not be criticized by other members of the public because that is my right, my decision, my choice as a parent. Now, we all know that North Public School District, we rolled out the One North Plan under the direction of State Appointed Superintendent Cammie Anderson. I do believe that the policy and that process did open up choice and options for members of the community. My concern is that under the current standards and quality of education that's being provided to families in the community, you still have some individuals and some family members that are going to end up with the short end of the stick. And the reason that will happen is because not every school in the city of Newark is a quality school. That's not something that anybody's denying. We don't deny it as a board. The school district doesn't deny it. So when you talk about, you know, a parent filling out a universal enrollment form and having 8 options, most families are choosing the same schools, those high-performing schools, right? And if for whatever reason that's not one of the options or selections that's made, you know, during the process, you as a parent may get stuck with that school that's currently underperforming or lagging in comparison to those other schools.
So let me ask you a question, Rashawn. So are you saying that that while you have this choice and the system is, or folks are working to repair a broken system, that some of the discussion that's out in the street about what's going on has much to do with the fact that they are ignoring what is, and they just kind of want this utopia immediately. They want to ignore the fact that there are broken schools and there's a process to fixing everything.
Yeah, so I don't want to say that anybody's ignoring it, but as parents, when it comes down to the education of our children, don't tell me that my kid can get a great education 2 years from now when the school improves. I want my son to have a great education now, right? And I think everybody at this table probably feels that way. So as a member of the board, member of this community, that's what I have to take into consideration. So when somebody's telling me we plan to have this school on target or performing in 3 to 5 years from now, I'm looking at the faces of these parents and saying 3 to 5 years from now, it's not happening fast enough.
Let me say something about this. One of the things that we have to really consider is the politics of what's going on. We get caught up in semantics and saying choice and that, you know, we want to have quality education. But the idea about this relationship of the different kinds of standards in education that we have now is involved with policy. How the funding is appropriated to allow different opportunities for the relationship of education to be brought into our communities is one of the areas that we don't really want to talk about because we don't know it that well. The condition that we are under right now is really based upon how this whole involvement of funding came into existence. Abbott is choice. And now it has been called something different. When Abbott was appropriated, we had something called whole school reform. It was helping to develop a better curriculum for the kids in the communities. It began to fail because the funding did not come through appropriately. This charter situation evolved around a relationship of understanding that when we talk politics and we talk Republicans and Democrats, the Republican Party has a record of being anti-union. And the relationship of it is that if there is an opportunity to bring in another standard to change the financial method in which money is given to our educational system, it will give us a better opportunity for a budget that will exist. The relationship of how things have gone wrong is that when they began to withdraw the resources necessary for public school funding to exist on a proper basis, and then began to divert it to this new system of option called charter, it became an unbalance. And the factor now is that because of the influence and because of the way in which people are being conditioned to believe that they're selecting charters over public is not true. We have to give a lot of credit to our parents. My daughter, who graduated out of Shabazz High School.
Oh, don't get those mixed up, man.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Let me tell you. My daughter has to send my grandson to a charter school across the community. They get up early every morning to get on that bus to get that child to that school, and he loves going to school. It's not because he's going to a charter. It's because his mama gives him the incentive to want to learn.
So I want to add to that.
I want to say something.
Well, before we go further, I want to give a call-in number, 646-378-0810. Again, 646-378-0810.
Right. I wanted to bring a little balance to something that Michael said. He said something to the effect that when you close a public school and then the person has to catch 2 buses in order to get to the school that they were placed in. That's a very extreme example. We have Veronica Branch. It happens, but it's a very extreme example. We have Veronica Branch on, who's a very active person in the community, and she was going to, I went to Brugal School, by the way, up until 2nd grade, then I went to the University of Islam on South Orange Avenue. So my parents thought the University of Islam was going to provide a better education. So she willingly, every morning, drove me across town for me to get a better education.
Willingly.
Right, exactly, willingly. And we paid tuition too, so it wasn't even free. So if somebody was giving us something free, we'd have went wherever they told us to go. Well, at any rate, Brugal was closed. The school that she had to go to was 2 blocks away, 2 or 3 blocks away. And she is upset about that. That's fine. The world doesn't always work the way we want to work. So to me, to have a fit about not being able to go across the street for your kid to go to school and they have to go 2 or 3 more blocks, to me that's unreasonable. And I'm thinking that most of these choices or whatever's happening is just a few blocks. It's not like like you're going into another town. Let me tell you my personal situation. Every day, my wife and I commute 2.5 hours in total. I have a traditional public school in my town that is highly ranked. People pay $400,000 or $500,000 just to go to our public school. But 45 minutes away was a better school, a better private school, a better independent school. So me and my wife decided we was going to do the switcheroo, and I'll take them down there, and she's going to do the pickup, and and it boils down to with traffic 2.5 hours a day. So when I hear people complaining about going a few blocks or across town, and at the end of the day, you're responsible for getting your kids to school. I'm responsible. I drive in the morning. She drives back. We've never caught a bus. Even when I was a kid, we never caught a bus. So the whole thing about choice is, things are not going to work your way in the world. But at any rate, I just wanted to give a few examples that you got the extreme example where you have some kids catching 2 buses like Mr. Michael Dixon said. Then you got the other example where people don't want to go 2 extra blocks. But anyway, Rashawn, go ahead on.
What I wanted to add to that was, when we really talk about choice and understanding the dynamics, understanding the dynamics in the city, this this matter of choice is nothing new to us in the community. Let's say that first and foremost. The difference now is that there's a formal process, right? For the longest, the Newark Public Schools District had a monopoly on public education here in the city of Newark, right? Let's just be clear about that. So there was very little competition, right? So as a parent, if you were in this crappy neighborhood, right, school or in this area, you were confined to sending your kid to that school because of your geographical location. These were the options you had. If you could afford it, you would put up the money and probably send your kid to a private school, move out of the city of Newark, go to another township, or like most of us, myself, my family included, we would use the address of a family member that lived in another part of town, and their house was in an area where there was a better school, and we used that address and we commuted back and forth to school.
That's absolutely right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that choice has always been there, right? But prior to the existence of this universal enrollment, we as concerned parents and community members, we took it upon ourselves to say, you know what, you're not going to confine me or tell me that I have to send my kid to this school. I'm going to exercise my right to choose, and I'm going to do it by any means necessary. And we did that for so long.
Yeah, but Hassan, this whole thing about this universal selection process still does not give you complete choice. It gives you options. And many of the options that should be considered are withdrawn. And on most cases, because of politics again, when it came down to No Child Left Behind and then Race to the Top, a lot of those options began to disintegrate. And it was based upon money, the funding, and the relationship of that. And Osman, I feel for you, what you're talking about in terms of what it took. My dad often talked about how he had to put cardboard in his shoes in order to walk to school, and he had to walk miles and miles to get to school. We don't really have to do that. But the problem is that the relationship of our opportunities are taken from us based upon the priorities of political interests.
Right. So can I ask another question, and then I'll let you go. Just one. So, I mean, is this semantics when we say it's not real choice, it's options? Because if I say true choice, right, I may want a school that has partially purple and blue walls, or I want X number of kids in the classroom, and like I want it exactly the way I want it, and then that's choice, right?
That would
But
be
when
socialism, though.
Right, but there are, I think at the end of the day, it's options. So you can choose within more options, right? That's really what we're saying.
That's what we're saying.
Right. So it's choice, but it's not unlimited choice.
Correct.
Right. So
You can't just go
Absolutely.
to anywhere
I
and
just
say,
want-
I want my kid
Right.
to go here
Right.
because I like this school.
Okay.
You can do that.
But the reason you can't do that is because there are other parents, just like you, who are going to be standing at the door of that
Exactly.
school if it's a good school.
You're
right?
absolutely right.
Which means that there are not going to be enough seats available.
That's absolutely right.
So to fix that problem,
What's the next option?
every school that's serving serving kids in the city of Newark has to be a great school. If I'm a parent, probably you, right? If you had to send your kid across town on 2 buses to go to school, how would you feel if your kid was going to, let's say, Science Park as an example, and they were getting one of the best educations in the city? I think that makes it a little more palatable for me under those circumstances. But when you're telling someone they have to go and catch 2 buses and they're going to a crappy school on the other side of town,
Yeah, no, we got it.
you understand what I'm
Yes,
saying?
I do.
So I think we're all on the same page when
No,
it comes to that,
definitely,
right?
definitely. Osman, just quickly to go back to you. If you wanted to put your child in that school across the street, could you?
Sorry?
When you said that you made the choice to
Right.
drive.
I don't have, I can tell you right now, under no circumstances do I expect any school to be across the street. But I do have a school about 6-7 blocks away from my house. It's a highly ranked public school. Like I said, people are paying big money for the houses. But I found a better school
But my question
about
is,
7 towns away. And since I want the best for my child, I'm burning gas. I got a gas bill, just gas alone, $700 a month gas bill, just for the commute between my wife and I. But I don't ever expect that kind of comfort. I don't think I don't think I have a right to say, hey, if you don't put a school across the street from my house, I'm going to protest.
Well, let's not play on the words. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, you said that there is a school closer.
Right.
It's a highly ranked school.
Right.
That if you wanted your child in that school, you have the option of putting your child in that school.
The operative word is highly ranked. What was Bregar ranked?
No. My question is, do you have the option of putting your child in that school that's 7 blocks away?
Oh, I have.
You have that option.
It's a public school.
So is Bregar. But my question is, they don't have that option.
Because it was closed.
They closed it. Now, I taught at Bregar.
Right.
Bregar was not a bad school. I taught there. The kids were learning, they were moving, they were growing. So when you say you made that decision, these parents don't have that choice. They don't have that decision power because the school is closed. Now we talk about the community being shut down. Now we're talking about the value of the homes going down. So it's a whole big thing. But just to jump on another topic, because it's hard to jump in here with all these educated brothers. Right? So when I get it, I'm going to try to hold it. Let's talk about this algorithm that Ms. Anderson didn't want to give up.
Okay.
Anytime we ask for something, you got to Oprah it. Now, I read like a 35-page thing about this algorithm that came out of New York. The algorithm was put together for school crowding. It wasn't put together for school choice.
Are you saying that Cammie's using that same algorithm
Yes,
that you're
sir.
about to discuss?
That is what I'm saying.
You know that.
According to that 35-page article that I read, it said, well, it's 35 pages, not an article, but it said this is the exact algorithm that Cammie Anderson is using, is what it said. And the key to it, the part that stuck out to me out of all of those pages, was the part that said it has to be a perfect marriage. That stuck out because it said if Shabar is the principal of Science Park, and Shabar doesn't want to take kids from Bregar. If he doesn't put Bregar down as a sending school, there is no perfect marriage. So therefore, those kids that are applying to Science Park from Bregar, because Mr. Jeffries chose not to put that down because he didn't want those kids, according to this document, they will not have any shot at getting into Science Park because that marriage has to be made by both sending and receiving school.
Can I jump in?
Yes, sir.
I want to jump in on real quick on a couple points. One is Bregar, because Mr. Dixon said that Bregar is closed. Bregar is open.
Well,
the
traditional Bregar that was there is no longer there.
The traditional Bregar that was there, according to the data I have in front of me, had about 400 kids in the year 2000. Had only 250 by 2013. The parents ain't want to go there.
That's also
and if you look at the South Ward, we see the South Ward has had the largest number of parents who are opting out of the traditional public schools, going to the public charters. 40% in the South and actually 40% in the West too. So we talk about Bregal. The parents are already saying, I'm out of here. The parents are already saying, I'm not feeling this. When you go from 400 to 250 students in 13 years, now under new management at Bregal, they have over 500 students because the parents wanted a school run, frankly, by a place like Team Academy because they like the results. And the Credo study, for example, the Credo study just came out last week. Hopefully everybody's heard about it. This is conducted by Stanford University, world-class researchers. So these are just facts. So when everybody's talking about their conspiracy theories and white folk and Republicans and hedge funds and Christie and whoever they got. I don't know whatever white man they got behind them. I'm not. Let me put the facts. I know all that's coming. I know they got somebody on Wall Street that they saw kissing another white man. I don't know what they. But this is my point. The Credo study, right? Stanford just came out this week. Some of the best researchers in anywhere.
Absolutely.
They found that the charter schools in Newark, that in math, kids have an additional 3 months. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. It's even better than that. I'm sorry. I'm in the charter schools in Newark that there's an additional 7.5 months of learning and reading, and 9 months in math. So they're saying that in a charter school, you're almost getting an extra year of learning based on the facts of the data. That's why the parents are leaving. We can talk all day and night about Republicans, Abbott, Christie, Cammie, all that foolishness, which is what it is. The parents, but that's what I believe, because the parents.
What you're saying is foolishness.
It
is, and I'm gonna tell you why.
Can I finish what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Can I finish? Wait a minute. Why you interrupt? I didn't interrupt you.
Herbert, he's gonna go. He's gonna go.
No,
No, let me finish.
No, but you're gonna say what I said was foolishness?
Don't,
I'm saying it.
let's not Dame Dash this interview.
Yeah. Let me just finish.
Bring it back.
I wasn't even talking about what you said, Herbert, because
Well, that's what I said, though. It's what I said. I
Can I
told you.
please
It was
finish? I didn't
politics.
hear you talking about
Family,
hedge
go
funds
on.
and all that. This
Go
is the
ahead.
point.
Go ahead.
Because that is
I
the
will. I will bring that in.
then we can absolutely talk about that.
We
I'm
can
happy to get there. I'm talking about the narrative that is out here in this community.
Absolutely.
And to be frank, the reason that people put that narrative out there is because they want to distract people from the facts. Because they get you all fired up about the scary white people, they lose track of the fact the school's been failing poor black families for 30, 40 years. And that's why they are flocking. This ain't Shavar. I'm just describing what the parents are doing. 40% of the public schools in the South and West, they are leaving. And they're leaving because the data shows you're talking about almost an additional year of learning in these schools. They know what's going on. And most of the folk who are in power know what's going on because they ain't got their kids there.
Exactly.
You tell me who in the political class, who in the union leadership, who got their kids in these schools?
Well, just,
Name them. Name them.
I will tell you. I will
Name
tell
them.
you. I will tell you. I will tell you. My daughter is graduating from North Star, and the reason why my daughter is graduating from North Star is because
Come on, man.
the reason why my daughter is graduating from North Star is because it was an option that we were able to get based upon the model that was created in the public school system. She was going to Brown Academy, and Brown Academy was shut down. And fortunately for us, we were able to get my daughter out of Brown Academy before it was shut down. And a number of those students right now that were in Brown Academy are struggling hard to try to graduate. So yeah, the option to be able to get her into an education system that gave me the kind of confidence that she would grow is what I took advantage of as a parent. But it wasn't because it was a charter school. If it was a public school that really did the kind of things that were necessary,
Grammar High School.
we're talking from the feeder program, which was a program that Baraka wanted to create back in the day.
What grade did she
But
enter North Star?
She entered North Star in her junior level.
High school?
Right, no, in her the junior high school
Yeah.
level.
How come you didn't choose Central? How come you didn't
Well,
choose
because-
Weequahic? How come you didn't choose West
Hold on,
Side?
Osman. It's not about how come I just choose.
text messages.
The reality was that she was at Brown Academy when we got her into the charter program. And I'm going to explain to you. The situation with the charter program was supposed to have been an integration into the public schools, just like it is now. In a sense, the public charter. What happened was that because there was so much political rigmarole, so to speak, going on,
Right.
they created this concept called competition.
Who created that?
Well,
Who's
it-
they? I'm curious.
well, there's a conglomerate of educators, and they're called.
That's very nebulous.
I know. I Wait a minute, you're insulting me. I didn't say
I'm
that.
just
So
asking
don't make it sound like you don't know what I'm talking
I'm just
about.
asking you, Mr. Clary.
No,
Who's in your
I'm-
conglomerate? That's
I'm
all I'm saying,
the
brother.
conglomerate-
We having fun here.
Conglomerate. No, we're not, because people are listening in and they want to hear some serious
all right,
facts
well, listen.
from someone like you. Who just
We
ran
all
for
left our
mayor.
Eagles at the door. We having
Who's in the
fun. We're
conglomerate?
talking
I
education.
ran for county executive. Come on, let's play the role.
So
No, there is a organization of charter school leaders, Team Academy, the North Star people. There's a group, and I was part of that group. So
Right.
I'm telling you what the whole
What
concept was. The idea was that since they won't let us in, let's create an opportunity, and that was the competition. The competition, now we say charter versus public. Instead of it being something that we drive toward a system of inclusion, it became a system of separation. And they began to build the way in which it would exist. Now, the problems that were going on in the public schools, which are better in the charter schools, is that their administrations are run differently. And they're not, and the way the state has run our public school system has nothing to do with education.
Okay. So let me ask you a question, Herbert, and anybody can let me know. Shavar just quoted a whole bunch of facts, right? And all of these facts were performance-based facts, right? That say that not only are the parents interested in these charter schools and they're flooding the gates with their kids, but that these kids are succeeding. And so all of what you're saying, Mr. Glenn, I don't know. I mean, I'll go and I'll research it and then I'll figure it out. But what does that have to do with the performance data that Shavar gave? I mean, and can we all
I'll tell
agree?
you,
But can we all agree?
because-
But one more thing. And can we all agree that at the end of the day, all of us are interested in our children succeeding and being educated and prepared to to challenge these their competition for these emerging jobs in the 21st century.
Let me answer.
And I want to add on too. I want to add on. Did that conglomerate keep you from sending your kid to Central or Shabazz or Weequay or West Side?
No, it didn't.
Oh.
And I'm gonna tell you
Okay.
that it didn't. But again, the system was run better than the state-run political system that was running our public schools. The system was better. And so therefore, that's the reason why they're beginning to migrate. I'm not saying that there is anything negative about the positive effects that have occurred in the charter process. Their systems are run very well. There are some charters that aren't, and they don't exist any longer because of the politics
Which
of
shows
no
you that
child.
they're held accountable, unlike what people say.
Well, again, the public school system is run by the state, and they don't do it in a way that it educates our children. They do it in a way that it represents their political agenda. So
Okay.
I can tell you, and I won't call them chickens and squash,
Right.
but I'll tell you one thing. We are more concerned about how do we get to local control, because in the whole atmosphere of reality, we don't have control over our schools. Our schools are run on a political agenda, so therefore it appears as if the charters are better than the public schools, but they are doing a darn good job because of their independence.
What high school did you go to? Hold on.
Well,
Hold on. What high school did you
James
go to?
Monroe in the Bronx.
I went to Weequay High School in Newark.
Okay.
It was under local control. My brother over here went to Chancellor in Weequay.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. When we had local control, it was crap. So
Oh,
you
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it was
it really made
terrible.
it bad for your
It was
lifestyle.
terrible.
So
You had a
terrible.
bad lifestyle
Okay,
because
okay.
of
Local control was crap.
Let
Right.
me
Come on.
jump in here real quick.
Chairman.
So there was a couple of things. One, Mr. Dixon, you brought up the algorithm, right?
Yes, sir.
So as a board member, I can tell you 100% that I've never personally seen the actual algorithm, but there's one piece of there's a document, and I'll say the policy behind the universal enrollment that actually got no attention. There was no discussion around it whatsoever, and that was the memorandum of understanding that every charter school signed when they opted in to play a part in the universal enrollment. And I believe that we won't be able to solve these issues that we're talking about. I think it really boils down to equity. So I think that's what everybody's saying when you look at the charter schools and traditional public schools. And that memorandum of understanding has some clear statements to help drive accountability to get us closer to that equity. And it's supposed to consist of collaboration between charter schools that serve students in Newark and traditional public schools to make sure that we're sharing best practices amongst administrators, amongst teachers, and also to ensure that we're sharing data across the board. My concern with that is, well, the state appointed superintendent doesn't govern charter schools. So when you have a policy like this in place, who's the governing body to help drive the compliance for the existence of this policy? We don't have a governing body in place right now that's completely taking ownership of that. The state is not taking responsibility. So right now you have a void. And I think there's an opportunity for community members local elected officials, union representatives, concerned parents, to really put our heads together and form some type of council or committee to say, listen, we have this document that all of the schools that participate in universal enrollment have agreed to, they've signed it, they've agreed to uphold these tenets. Now, how do we drive compliance from a citywide perspective as opposed to a charter versus traditional public school perspective? The other piece, you mentioned the marriage. Now, I'm hoping that there's no principals in this school district that had the ability to turn off or deny any schools from being fed into their system. I'm going to say this right now. I believe that if there's any principals in this school district that had the ability to do so and did so, they should be fired.
I agree.
I believe that 100% because that right there puts us down the path where we continue to have this inequality in our city. So when you talk about the true choice, if that really occurred, then I would have to say then no, it's not true choice because somebody on the back end is tampering with something, right? I don't know that to be factual, so I don't want to take that and run with it. But if that is the case, that's a serious problem and concern that I have.
Okay.
Okay, Michael.
Just quickly back to my man Osman. When we talked about, having that privilege to take your child a couple of towns away opposed to 7 blocks away, how'd you get there? In your car.
It's 6 or 7 towns actually. I wish it was 2.
Okay, 6, but how'd you get there though?
I drove.
You
Yeah.
drove. That's a privilege, man. A lot of people in Newark don't have the privilege to just go outside and jump in a car. So when I talk about buses, and we can't give me the head nod like,
Hey.
but we can't say that because we don't know what these people are coming from, what they're dealing with. They may have fell upon hard times. They don't have a car. So when I made the comment about the bus, I wasn't being facetious because there are people, I don't remember the young man's name, he got 5 kids in Newark Public Schools. And I stood out in front of Burgaw with him while he did a press conference and said his 5 kids go to 5 different schools.
That's terrible.
Wait a minute.
That's President Tillman.
Now,
That's President Tillman.
Brown Academy. I taught at Brown Academy too. Brown Academy scores were going up. Kevin Guyton was an awesome principal. And they closed the school. They didn't close it because the scores weren't rising. They didn't close it because there were massive fights and things of that nature. They just opted to close the building.
Why? So here we go. Why'd they close it? Why?
And that's something that
Because there's a narrative.
we never found out.
But there's a narrative that's out in the community, right? That says that they closed it because the superintendent has some friends that she wanted to be able. So let's talk about the narrative that's out there, because this is fact and fiction.
I'm gonna tell you one thing I do remember. They said that they closed that school and they were looking to put a strip mall on that block of Bergen Street. That is one thing I heard because of you mentioned the friends of whomever. They said they were closing the school and they wanted to build a strip mall on that part of Bergen Street. They said the police precinct was coming. They was thinking about building a strip mall. I don't know how true it was, but I know they didn't close the school because the teachers in that building and the students in that building were not producing.
What's the official reason? They had to give some
was
reason.
enrollment, right? Wasn't it enrollment?
No,
Low enrollment?
No,
They had to be given a reason.
no, sir. Well, you know what? I don't know what their reason was, but they're
That's
going to tell
important.
me what they want.
We have the chairman of the board here.
Well, he wasn't on the board at that
But
time.
the only reason-
But
the
wait
only
a minute. But we have the chairman of the board here, right? Though he wasn't on the board at the time, maybe he has some insight that he can share as to why it was closed.
So I'm glad we got on this topic right here because this is when you hear about the One North plan, the only thing that gets discussed is this universal enrollment. And there's another aspect to this that ties into the facility overhaul in the city of Newark, and we never have discussions. So when we talk about charter launches, long-term leases that the district is engaged in with charter schools, that's all a part of it, right? Whether they're paying market rate or not, it's all a part of the discussion, right? So
No child left behind.
when we started to have these discussions and it was actually rolled out to the board, there was some discussion about schools that had previously been closed, and Brown Academy obviously being one. And in the district's assessment, this was one of the worst facilities we had, right? But if you think about the proximity to Belmont Runyon, which also served that immediate area, that was a newly constructed facility why continue to force staff and students to go into this facility with these conditions when we can route those same family members to a school that's only a few blocks away? And that was what what was communicated, what the rationale was behind it. Now, my concern is that the school has now become an eyesore for the community. Nothing's happened. You ride past the playground, you got weeds overgrown, right? But then we also have this brand new police precinct that was constructed. I think that some folks should have sat down at the table and put their heads together to find out how that facility could have possibly been utilized, or that space could have become the location for the new police precinct, right? Because you're already doing the new construction, right? And I think that's the problem that we have when we have, these folks on this side of the table saying, I'm moving in this direction, these folks over here saying, I'm moving in that direction, where it probably would have made a lot of sense to actually do that and to make that happen at that particular location.
How's the new school coming along?
Uh,
The new school,
they're coming along
is it?
pretty good.
Anybody got any stats on that?
So we have some new construction.
what school
We have
is
new
it?
construction
What's the name of
projects
that
that are
school?
broke. We have Elliott Street. That's
No, the name of that school that everybody migrated from. Round two.
Oh, Belmont
Belmont
Runyon.
Runyon.
How's Belmont Runyon doing?
Yeah, tell me before I tell you. How's
Well,
Belmont
you
Runyon
tell me
doing?
since you know, since
Well,
you in here.
my understanding is that Belmont Runyon is having some issues. Belmont Runyon has new leadership, and I'm not putting it on the new administration in the building, but that building was a difficult building from the beginning. So when you put a new administrator in there that may not have the where-be of it all to know how to handle every situation, it makes for a bad mix.
Wow.
But as a union person, as a teacher, I get a lot of calls about things going on in Belmont Runyon from the union perspective. And I must say that when I do reach out to the administrator, she is very receptive to making changes. We've sat down, we've talked best practices, we've talked how to make changes, how to move this around, move that around. And the principal there, she is a first-year principal, but she is very receptive to change. She's not one of those people that says, I'm doing it my way, this is my building. Because I go into those type of buildings too. But before you grab that, when they took over Brigard, you said now the population is 500.
Yes, sir.
How many did they bring with them into that building? And how many of the 500 in that building are from that area?
It's my understanding, I don't have those numbers on my fingers, it's my understanding the majority of those kids, so that 250 who are left, my understanding the majority of them are still there too. Plus families from other parts of the South.
Well, I know the one lady, Tawana Sheard, her daughter's not there. She lives across the street. And they didn't, Newark didn't put her there. Because she did the video with Altair Kinney as they were walking across to get over to George Washington Carver. And then if she didn't get into Carver, they kept on walking down to, I want to say it was Chancellor.
Yeah.
But she didn't, she lives across the street. She didn't get
Well,
into that building.
I've met with Ms. Shear personally
Explain that.
over at Hawthorne Avenue School, which is where she actually enrolled her daughter.
Okay.
At my first board meeting, being serving as chairman, I was asked to come to Hawthorne Avenue School. I'll never forget the president of the PTSA came to our board meeting, read this letter, asked me and other board members to come out and meet with them. The meeting took place on Tuesday. We were at Hawthorne Avenue School that Friday. We made no promises or guarantees that we would be able to work with, because remember, Hawthorne Avenue was one of the schools that was slated
To close.
to have some kind of conversion take
Correct,
place
yeah.
also. But as we know now, Hawthorne Avenue is still straight K through 8 to serve that community, because in the discussions that took place between myself and the superintendent, reality is, listen, if you remove both of these traditional public schools, you don't have an option in this immediate area for families that want to send it. So we have to have this school open, and we have to provide those supports. I also met with Principal James over at the school as well. So, I think that was one of the areas, or one of the things that we missed as a board.
But with the grades in that building soaring and the kids doing so well, why would it even be on the table?
So I think the question there is, if we look at both of those years, and I don't have the data in front of me, I would just ask everybody to go back and look. So we showed that year where it was like stellar growth. But then when you also looked at the enrollment there, the enrollment was low. I would think that for a school that had as high as results that they had from an achievement standpoint, that more families in that community would have wanted to send their kids to Hawthorne Avenue School. The problem with that, we haven't done a root cause analysis to ask those parents in that community to say, well, why weren't you sending your kids here? Is it the culture or the climate of the school? Is it security or is it violence or high crime rates in the community? So we missed out on that opportunity because that should, in my opinion, should have been the thing we led with universal enrollment. We should have rolled out the application or survey the parents, select your top 8 choices, right? Once that data came back, we were then able to look at the bottom 8 choices for K through 8 and high schools. Now you take that and you do a deep dive and do personal interviews with the family members in that community to find out why these schools were ranked as your bottom choices. And then we come up with development plans, right? And we rotate these schools in for whether it's a renew school model or whether it's some kind of transformational model that needs to be put in place. But you allow the community, the parents who are taking their kids to these schools every day, right? Feet on the ground. They can tell us what's going on in these schools because they're there, right? And we missed that. We totally missed that.
Well said.
I'm not.
Wait, before you get started, right? What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break, and then when we come back, I got a question that was emailed in from Tawanda. So that's a great segue, right? So we're gonna be right back after this break.
Yo, so is this recorded? You got listen. So
Now it's not. We're not recording.
no, I'm talking about the camera.
Yeah.
This is gonna be one of those 5 years from now. We looking back, seeing how the systems change.
Yeah.
Like, remember that interview we did up there with Aya?
I gotta tell you this, man.
How long I have?
I got 2 responses. One response was, Mike, you're an ass. You're crazy. You're going to sit down there with Eric&Ossman and Shabar, the
It's a little
Charter
bit
guy.
better, but when everybody starts talking and you guys start laughing, you can't understand anything of what anybody
Okay,
says.
all right. I'm gonna suggest that don't be afraid to pick it up because I use this at home and I'm like this
Right.
sometimes.
Because then you can hear you.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
on the thing it's not gonna work. So when I push it in front of you, Shabar, you can pick it up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so we can.
I hope by the next time we do this, I'll have
We're
my
back on in 10 seconds.
Hey,
10 seconds.
listen,
10 seconds. We're back on.
Okay.
Tell us who
Terry,
you are when you're
Terry.
speaking.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to rub off.
Are we on? He told you he wasn't that.
Welcome back to Real Talk Radio.
Dialogue.
I tell you right now, we're having a ball up here, and we're just having a great time. And this is one of my better experiences, one of the best shows actually for Real Talk because I'm actually surrounded by such powerful intellects, and I'm just feeding off of it, and we're all having a good time. I wanted to make a little segue here.
I want to make sure I get to Tawanda's question before you.
I'm gonna let Eric take care of Tawanda's question now, and then after that, we'll go ahead on.
So Tawanda asks, why can't charter schools receive their own resources and not take from the Newark Public Schools?
So
What are they taking from the Newark Public School?
I'm assuming that she's talking about buildings and resources, money.
Well, let's take it one by one because I think it's very important we have this conversation to be very systematic. So we said buildings and then money. The money to educate children in the city of Newark comes from the state of New Jersey overwhelmingly. The city of Newark puts in a very small piece. Overwhelmingly is from the state of New Jersey, then a little piece from the federal government, a little piece from the city of Newark. That money is to educate children, right? It's not to go to a system, it's to educate the child. If the parent for the child, so it's not they, because I was like, why are they doing this? The parent makes a choice to say, I want to send my kid to Team versus, South 17th Street or Burgaul, then the money falls again. Just like if a kid was at North Star Team last year and goes back to the district, that money goes with that kid back to the district. Now buildings. The fact of the matter is we have a lot of empty space in the Newark Public Schools because 1970 we had about 70,000 kids in the city of Newark. Today, even including the charter, we have about 45,000. So that's why we have many buildings that are empty, like Brown Academy we just talked about, and then Old Bergen Street, and then we have some buildings that are half full. Now, what I can never understand is why anybody would be opposed to a public charter school saying, I will give you money. Because right now, as we talked about, Brown is an eyesore. It's weeds all over the place. The district has to pay money to maintain it. Let somebody talk about renting that to a charter school, right? Everybody gonna get upset. The conspiracies, all this, white people, the hedge fund, all of that, and they're talking about giving the district money, which actually saves jobs in the district and allows the district to reinvest in education of kids. So it's a win for the district and it's a win for the public charter school because they're gonna educate kids. So when we talk about why are they taking buildings, the public charter schools are using buildings that are either underutilized or not utilized at all. And at the end of the day, what I think is most as important is we understand the resources are not for a system, they are for the child. The building there isn't for the charter school, it's not there for the district, it's for the baby. The money isn't there for the charter school, it's not there for the traditional public school. It's there to educate a child, and the parent ought to be able to have dominion over those resources, and that's where the choice conversation is.
I want to follow up with Siobhan on something.
Can they hear you?
Yeah. One of the things that came across on Real Talk, Veronica Branch has said that Cammie Anderson cut their budget in 50%.
Whose budget?
Bragard Avenue School. Now, my understanding was that schools are funded basically per pupil.
That's correct.
Okay, so when she was saying that she cut it 50%, when the allocation is per pupil, it was confusing. And the other thing that came up was